Hi, everybody. Good morning. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about Shaolin and the tradition of Shaolin. I just want to, before we get into the meat of the conversation and meet our two extraordinary panelists, I also just want to echo the thank you. Thank you for supporting this dream that we have about taking this timeless tradition of wuxia, of which the Shaolin tradition is an integral part of it, rebooting it for the 21st century. And this could not happen without your direct participation and support. So again, thank you. Whether you're joining us live today or watching this on video, just say thank you. This is one of the tiers that we promise for our super backers. So we're promise keepers today. You know, one of the main goals for Immortal Studios, or one of the inspirations, is to take wuxia to its founding tradition, to the founding principles, to the founding ideals of, you know, you hear kung fu, you hear martial arts so much, and when you have that conversation, it's impossible to have it without going to the mother lode of it, Shaolin, where many would agree that the body of knowledge that we understand as Chinese martial arts, or even martial arts around the world, comes from Shaolin. So it's really shrouded in mystery and mysticism and a lot of legends and folklores, a lot of lost treasures, a lot of bits of history. We also know that from films like, you know, the 36 Chambers of Shaolin or Kung Fu, the movie Shaolin Temple that started the careers of Jet Li, that Shaolin has been an intricate part of the cinematic and literary traditions. And those are the inspirations that brought me to want to create a story like The Adept. And something that we wanted to do that was different from The Adept is really for the authentic tradition and lineage of Shaolin to come through it, because there's so many things done in the name of Shaolin that when you look through it, has nothing to do with Shaolin. So we wanted to bring that authentically. And in order to do that, we had to engage Shaolin Masters and people who were deeply ensconced in the study of Shaolin. Now, I've had a personal relationship with the Shaolin Temple. I'm glad to say that I've participated in closed door sessions of the Shaolin Temple, where the real Shaolin adepts would train for 49 days, you know, meditate 16 hours a day. I've actually been through the traditions and seen the ancient practices at work, and what I've seen behind the scenes have blown my mind. I've had the benefit of walking and meditating inside Bodhidharma's cave in the back mountains of Shaolin. I've had a chance to befriend a Shaolin abbot, and many, many extraordinary warrior monks, to learn a little bit about the inner workings. And so I'm really excited and happy today to share with our Kickstarter and the Adept community two extraordinary disciples and students of Shaolin today. They're gonna, in the next 20 minutes or so, they're each gonna share with you a little bit of their own personal Shaolin journey, what they've learned, how they got involved with this Shaolin tradition. What are their major takeaways? What inspires them about Shaolin? What are really useful nuggets for the modern world to know and understand? So I've done my spiel. I like to introduce a good friend of mine, Master Yen Tuo, who is a Shaolin monk and has an official Shaolin lineage. He's the direct disciple of the current Shaolin abbot right now, and has and I'm especially supportive of his message, because he, in addition to talking about the martial arts, he really understands that the Shaolin tradition is about the martial and the Chan philosophy and practice coming together. So I'd like to call to the stage right now, Master Yen Tuo, and share with us a little bit about your Shaolin story.
Okay, of course. Hello, everyone. First, I want to say it's my honor to be part of this Shaolin talk. And I want to thank to Peter for selecting me to share some of my Shaolin experience, Shaolin life, Shaolin practice. So, you know, my name is Yan Tuo Shi. That's my the Shaolin Buddha's name. And I was born in a small village in Shandong province of China. which we call it the Kung Fu Village too. This whole area is, it's famous of Kung Fu. And then I really started learning Kung Fu with my father when I was 6 years old. And then so we just learn some of the local style we call 民间功夫. It's like a Hongquan style, so more local style, and it's different than the Shaolin style. And then I was just doing the local style kung fu with my father, and at the same time with the village people, the kids, the neighbors, about over 2 years. So I was learning like some basic movements, some of the simple forms, and then the chance I got into the Shaolin Temple, that's because one day my father asked me, do I want to go to the Shaolin Temple to learn the real Shaolin Kung Fu? After I heard that, I was really excited about that because, I used to watch in the Shaolin Temple movie by Jet Li. I believe that's most people, or a lot of people went to Shaolin Temple to learn Shaolin Kung Fu because of the movie. So yes, I said, yes, I want to go. So my father sent me to the Shaolin Temple right after the Chinese New Year. I went to Shaolin Temple when I was 9. And then by maybe it was in 1997. Yeah. So, I was excited for learn Shaolin Kung Fu at the Shaolin Temple, just like the movie, the monks fighting in the movie. I feel like I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to be like the Kung Fu monk that can learn Kung Fu and fight with bad people and protect the people of the village. And then so I was really expecting to learn some cool movement right away. But after I got into the temple, the whole thing I learned was the rules. I learned how to stand up, how to stand straight, how to walk, how to pray, how to eat, how to meditate. I was kind of like, oh, this is not something that I expected to. This is totally different. And then also, it was very hard and challenging for me to follow the temple schedule because we have a specific day and a time to do certain things. We have to wake up early at 4:30 in the morning every day, no matter weekend. There's no weekend, no break. So it's very challenging for me to just get used to it with the schedule. And then the first 2 years, I was learning most of the foundation, the basic movement. And then it was kind of like, oh, I just, sometimes my father asked me how I doing at the Shaolin Temple. I said, I was really, difficult with the schedule. It's something different. I'm not learning the Kung Fu movement. And he just, tell me, just keep going. This is the way you choose. So you just go all the way. And then, so later on, I learned more movement, more forms. And then the master always tell us, and the faster you learn, the faster you lose. So be patient. So when you learn something, you just repeat it over and over. That's how the Kung Fu skills come from. You don't want to learn too fast. And then at the same time, I think later on, I got more interested to the Shaolin history, the Shaolin philosophy, the Zen, the Buddhism, because that's the foundation of the Shaolin Kung Fu. The Kung Fu is based on the Buddhism religion and the Zen philosophy. So because I was so young, I didn't understand the part. I was really wanted to learn Kung Fu movement. And then, so when I got a little bit older, I started paying attention or learn more. I got more interested from the Shaolin philosophy part. And then by the age of maybe 12 or 13, I started practice more meditation, read more Shaolin history, the books. And then I understand, oh, the Shaolin Kung Fu not only focused on physical level. It's more from the philosophy, the lifestyle, because the master told us then the oldest training, the people actually they're training all the time. When they're cleaning the floor, when they're eating, they're doing a whole stance. When they clean the floor, they're pressing the movements. And then when they go to the field, the farming, they're pressing the movements. So actually it comes from the lifestyle, the everything, the life activities. And also other parts, it's from fighting. And before Shaolin monks practice Kung Fu, it's all meditation at the temple from Bodhidharma. That's all. That's the center idea of Shaolin Kung Fu. That's the soul of the body. So the meditation actually is the Shaolin Kung Fu, the foundation. So, and the other way is because when you're young, when you're doing Kung Fu, you have a lot of energy. You wanted to do something. You want to do something with other people, you know. So meditation, it can calm you down to let to extra energy to go away, to be soft, combined with the powerful movement. And then the other way is I learn more how to be a good person with your Kung Fu skill. I think the more powerful way from Shaolin Kung Fu, the difference between other martial arts is the Buddha's the religion. It's the compassion way. And also it's the Zen philosophy, because I don't think you can get that compassion from other martial arts. And I think that right now, other martial arts also focus on fighting or winning, to win a competition, to be the first and to be the best. But the Shaolin Temple or Shaolin Kung Fu that teaches you how to be humble, how to be lower than other people, how to be soft with your skill, how to be not to show off yourself when you go outside. It's a lot of more knowledge than the Kung Fu movement. So I really think the Shaolin Temple changed my life, and the Kung Fu changed my body health, and also the Zen philosophy changed my lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Yantua. So what was can you just share if you could describe the benefit of Shaolin, of practicing Shaolin Kung Fu, what do you think that is for somebody who doesn't know anything about Shaolin?
The first benefit, you have to start with the physical level first. When you're doing Shaolin Kung Fu, for some people who never learned Kung Fu, no experience, so I would think take the entry level and the physical level. The benefits start from our body first. Once we learn the physical movement, we have to go through that level, and then we can reach our spiritual level. So if you want to get, and also I wanted to share, it's the purpose. It's very important. For nowadays, people learn Kung Fu just because, okay, they feel interest. They never learn Shaolin Kung Fu. They heard from somewhere, they want to try it out. Okay, they say, okay, that's not something I wanted to do for a long time. They give up. So I want to say, what is the purpose for you to learn Shaolin Kung Fu? You really wanted to understand the Shaolin Kung Fu, or just want to learn a little bit to exercise, or just learn some movements, and then you stop. So, and the purpose is very important. You want to say, if my purpose is I wanted to really understand the Shaolin Kung Fu, the Shaolin culture, and that gives you a lot of benefits from it. It can change your personality, can change your life, can change the way you be, the way you act. So that's a more powerful way. The real benefit is in the long term of the practice.
So it comes down to commitment.
That's the commitment. Yeah, your strong determination from doing something. That's feel like I'm teaching the Kung Fu, the Shaolin culture in the West, in America. Feel 80% of people they can't do the long term of the practice. So most students, the longest student maybe 2 years, 3 years. For some reason they stop and then they move away. So that's very unfortunate, and they only learn the physical level. They never got a chance to understand what is the real Shaolin Kung Fu, what is the philosophy behind the movement. So they never really get the real benefits to their life. They got benefit to their body, which you can do any other sports, running, go to the gym, the same thing. It's not only for exercise my body. It's not about it. It's not only for that part. Otherwise, the Shaolin Temple won't last long for 2,000 years. the
Yeah.
Shaolin Kung Fu, the lineage passed down to me. So I think the real benefits is from your determination, commitment, your purpose. It's not only from what Shaolin Kung Fu can give it to you. You think about what can I to put myself to learn or study on the Shaolin.
So it's almost the antithesis of short-term thinking. Hearing you speak reminded me of a conversation I had with the head of the Shaolin warrior monks. We were talking about Kung Fu. He said, Kung Fu development actually come in different phases. And he considered the first 18 years just to be like elementary school. Like you're not really practicing Kung Fu until you put 18 years of your life into steady practice. That's like the first chapter. Like he doesn't consider someone who hasn't practiced 18 years steadily to be even rumen. He's not even inside the door.
No,
So that's the kind of long-term thinking for mastery. Thank you, Master Yanto. We'll come back to you for more conversation.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce a very good friend of ours, an extraordinary colleague, and a Shaolin disciple too. There's different branches of the Shaolin Temple. We've heard from somebody inside the monastic order, but Shaolin is such a big part of the whole ecosystem that there's a separate branch of lay disciples that have traveled in different parts, that have branched out into the rest of the world. And Ching, who is part of the Immortal team. For those of you who like the martial arts in the Adept, well, he's behind the authenticity of them, working very closely with our team to make sure getting the movements right. He's been the publisher of Kung Fu magazine, a really, really extraordinary contributor to the understanding of martial arts of Kung Fu in the West, in particular, as a Shaolin disciple. So I pose the same questions to you, Gene. What's been your Shaolin journey like?
Thank you, Peter. Well, I'm American born. So my experience was very different than Yang Tuo, and being Asian American, there weren't a lot of role models in media growing up. I mean, Mr. Sulu was the only one that really kind of sticks out. Everybody else was sort of token Asian characters. And so where I saw a lot of my role models was Japanese monster movies and Chinese Kung Fu movies. And that was it. And so, my family being Asian, a lot of my cousins were into martial arts. And so my first inspiration to get into martial arts was one of my cousins came through with this Kung Fu troupe, and they stayed at our house because they were going to a local tournament. And I had like this plastic toy sword. I was like 5. And, they broke that right away because it was a little plastic toy sword. And then they showed me one of their real swords. And I was like, wow, this is the stuff. And that stuck in my head for a long time. I started training in judo first because this was back east in Pennsylvania. And there wasn't Kung Fu around really. And when I came back to California, I bounced around a bunch of schools, did some Shotokan, did some more judo, but that didn't really just didn't click with me. And I was still sort of obsessed with swordsmanship. And so I was looking at Kendo, and I was looking at fencing, and I was looking at Kung Fu. And the way the scheduling worked is that I would either have to only take Kendo, or I could take Kung Fu and fencing. And so I wound up taking both of those. And I remember the first time I walked into my Kung Fu school, that was Kwang Lam's school. He had a traditional weapons rack of all these great pole arms and swords and everything. And I was just like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to learn those weapons. And they were like, well, you don't learn those for at least a year, maybe 2 years. We start you in staff. I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. And so Kwang Lam taught a version of Shaolin that came through Hong Kong. He was a Hong Konger. And it was called Bak Siu Lom, which is Northern Shaolin in Cantonese. And it is a very specific system. It was actually sort of the first Shaolin system to come to America because it was very prominent in Hong Kong. And I've showed it to a lot of the Shaolin monks, Xiantong included, and they all say it's like, oh yeah, I see the similarity. It's definitely a derivation because it has some of the very, very similar, like it ends in the hero's pose, and it has some very similar movements and techniques. And according to the history, it left the Shaolin Temple sometime in the later Ming Dynasty. So it's got variations, but it's its own system, and it's fairly well renowned and well distributed internationally. It was the precedent for Shaolin. It's what we all thought Shaolin Kung Fu was for many years before the temple revitalized and started propounding, its forms. So you can think of it as sort of a descendant, if you will. Then, so I first went to China in '91 as part of the AAU team representing the U.S., going to Shandong, in fact, to compete, and it totally opened my head going to China. It was such an amazing experience. And a few years later, in 1995, was when Shaolin Temple celebrated its 1500th anniversary, and I thought, well, I got to go see that. I'd seen the movie Shaolin Temple. I knew the temple was active, and by sheer fate, Yuan Fen, as we say, I managed to hook up with Matthew Polly, who is the author of American Shaolin and was one of the first American who took a prolonged stay at Shaolin Temple. He'd been there for several years. So American Shaolin it's a book that his first book.
One of our friends and Immortal, I think, is trying to make it into a TV show. So
That's right. He's actually one of my disciple brothers.
That's right.
So I went to Shaolin in 95, and there were a lot of tours going out in the 1500th for the 1500th anniversary. And keep in mind, this was prior to when Abbot Yongxin became abbot, although everybody was looking at him to be the next abbot. There was honorary abbots in between, but we haven't had an abbot. They hadn't had an abbot, a formally indoctrinated abbot, for a while. And so most of the tours would just go to Shaolin for like a day or two, China tour. But Matt was offering this program where you could stay for a month. And I thought, well, I'm down. Let me stay for a month. And it was incredible. I mean, I've never worked out so hard in my life, because there would be a morning session of 2 hours. There'd be an afternoon session of 2 hours. And then I was taking privates on top of that. And I really connected with Shida Tong, who was one of the teachers there. And so I went back the following year for another month with Matt again. And became a disciple of him. And then after that, I would continue to go to Shaolin almost every summer, for a couple of weeks to train. And I wrote a book about it too, called Shaolin Trips, which is really a collaboration of a lot of my writings in the magazine. Now, I became part of the magazine in 1999. And at that time, I had been freelance writing for all the martial arts magazines, Black Belt, Inside Kung Fu, everybody. And I had my ace card was I was one of the first Americans that had been to Shaolin. And so a lot of my material was disseminating that material, was saying, hey, here's the real temple, here's what's there. And so if you look at the bulk of my articles from 95 on,
but Ching, give us a Cliff Notes version. I mean, you've done so much writing, so I'm sure you've had a chance to really distill it down. Like, distill it down for our watchers right now. Like, what is the message of Shaolin in the 21st century?
What is the message in the 21st century? Well, it's all about the Chan or the Zen.
Explain to people what the difference between is Chan and Zen. What are we talking about here?
So Chan comes from the word dhyana, which is the Sanskrit word for meditation. And if you go back to India, where you have this multiverse of gods, it's multi-theistic, so you've got all these different gods. But then at the same time, there's these traditions of sadhuism, of asceticism, how to get to enlightenment. And it's very noisy because you've got all these different gods, you worship Ganesh or Shiva or whatever, and actually if you go to India, my wife and I spent a month and a half training yoga there, and going to the Buddhist sites. You can get an instant psychological read on somebody by seeing which gods they worship. So when Buddhism comes up, it sort of distills it down to just a practice. You kind
Give
of
us a Cliff Notes version of that. Let's just say,
right.
What is Diana? And
right, and so when it goes to China, it becomes China, and it kind of melds with Taoism in a way.
Right.
There wasn't the terms for a lot of Buddhist terms; they use Taoist terms, and it becomes Chan, which in essence, when you have all the gods in India, then you go to Buddha, to sort of one deity, and then a philosophy or a philosophy, a strategy, a methodology, a road to enlightenment. Then you go to China and get Chan, where you kind of throw the Buddha out in a way. I mean, Buddha's still present, and we still have all these Buddhist.
It just becomes less personified because
yeah.
idol worship, you're worshiping the external as opposed to the ideas behind it. I felt like it got sifted, and it became one big concept of awareness, consciousness, presence.
It gets into a fundamental discipline, how you train your mind and how you train your worldview. And so, people look at, like, say, the Kung Fu forms, and they look at sitting in Chan and Zen. It's the same character in Chinese and Japanese. The difference is that Zen has a slightly different take. And as Zen moves out, American Zen, people talk about European Zen, there's little variations because it adapts to the culture. But when it gets right down to it, it's the practice.
Yeah.
And the practice, whether it be just sitting or whether it be doing the Shaolin Kung Fu, it's the same. There's no distinction. It's the same.
It's kind of what Master Yentl was saying. It's this constant work, right?
Yes. It's a daily practice.
You're constant in everything that you do, bring in awareness and consciousness. But I think the big point here is that Diana traveled from India and landed in China, became a version of it that integrated with different aspects of Chinese culture, and then Chan was exported to Japan and became Zen.
Yes.
And then Zen traveled to the West and became what it is today. Now it's almost like it's on the tip of everybody's tongue, but there's kind of an interesting connection.
Right.
So I don't think that's why when you hear Shaolin Temple is the birthplace of Zen. I think that's where kind of the concept comes from.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. It started from Bodhidharma at the Shaolin Temple. He was meditating in a cave for 9 years on the mountain behind the Shaolin Temple.
Yeah, I think this is personally, I find it a very interesting because I practice some of the Indian ways myself. I started as my way in was on the Indian side, and then later on, I had the fortune of being introduced to Shaolin, and I started to find the similarities between those two body of knowledge. And I've always thought that connection has been really underexplored. So one of the fun things as a result that we're doing at Immortal Studios is really kind of bringing that lineage in place. For those of you who are paying attention to our storytelling, I would call attention to the key art of Fa Sheng. I do it on this video. That Fa Sheng, who is Amy's master, I would just say go back and look at our key art and see who's standing behind Fa Sheng in our key art. So that's a nice Easter egg on what is up ahead. Master Yentl and Jean, all of Immortal Studios, we really are committing our company to awakening the heroes in everybody through our storytelling. So I would ask you, what in your perspective, share a vision that you have of what a Shaolin hero look and feels like. Obviously, our main character, Amy, who's a young woman, we're kind of putting a new wrinkle there. She's on a journey to become a hero. Like, what are the defining characteristics that you would say that is a Shaolin hero?
In my heart, in my way.
Your way, yeah. Describe a Shaolin hero.
Throughout the history, you mean? Right?
No, somebody who's, you know, your idea of a Shaolin hero. It doesn't have to, it could be a person, it could just be, you know, a series of characteristics.
The Shaolin hero, actually, it's I think it's the founder of the Shaolin Kung Fu called Jin Na Luo Wang. Jin Na Luo Wang. He actually is the monk that are always hiding or working in the back of the kitchen. He never got a chance to train with the regular monks. And one time there's like a huge a group people like come to attack Shaolin Temple, and the monks couldn't just fight with them, and then they're very, very good, very strong, too many people. And then finally the Jin Na Luo Wang came out from the back of the kitchen with the Shaohuo Gun, the big stick, usually, you know, cooking, you know, put it with the fire, you know, the Shaohuo Gun, hold the Shaohuo Gun, the big stick, and then fall with all the bad people by himself. And then in the history, he's actually is a real hero of the Shaolin Kung Fu. And he saved the temple. He saved the temple. He saved the monk's life. And then
so someone who's anonymous, someone who doesn't call attention to himself, somebody who has a chance.
That's the real hero that you never really like pay attention on. The real hero, just like sometimes the movie is actually true, but they just make, you know, more attractive to the people. So the movie characters actually is true in the Shaolin Temple. And like, you know, like you say, usually the monks clean the floor. Actually, that's the best Kung Fu monk. And then the working in the back of the kitchen, cooking every day for the Henry's monk. What he doing is like using the Kung Fu skill, cooking, you know, chopping, cutting the food, you know, cooking every day, carrying the water. You know, that's how he practiced Kung Fu. But nobody see him. You know, he just training like that all the time. But one time, if there's an opportunity, he will stand out to protect everybody, protect the temple using his Kung Fu skill. That's a real hero in my heart.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. Ching, you care to add yours?
You know, I mean, I think like you, I've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of these Shaolin monks and a lot of people that aren't monks that perpetuate the Shaolin philosophy. And I think all of them, in my mind, are heroes. Shiao is a hero. You know,
yes.
Immortal's a hero in that is perpetuating these stories and sort of that anybody trying to get to the essence of Shaolin and trying to pass that on to the next generation is a hero to me. Now, keep in mind what we had said earlier about how Shaolin is that daily practice, and you know, 18 years before you get out of elementary school. It takes a long time and a lot of little steps, you know, to get up that mountain. And so there are a lot of people that represent Shaolin that may be premature, but everybody that puts their heart in it and tries to get to that point. A lot of us won't make it. A lot of us won't make it to the mountaintop, you know. I mean, every time I work with the Untitled, I'd see his skills and be like, I'm never going to be able to do what this guy can do.
The beauty of this is if you believe the philosophies that you get multiple chances. So
right, exactly.
That whatever you don't finish in this incarnation, you get to start next. Personally, I think it actually works. It explains why some people go a lot faster than others. You know, in practice, you get to see it. Like in wuxia terminology is gengu. You know, your constitution, how you're composed. You know, some people are just naturally predisposed to really being able to master it, understand it. And the philosophy is that, you know, you've attained it in some previous life. You know, my view of a real Shaolin hero, somebody who is really in tune with consciousness. You know, we talked about the centrality Dhyana and Chan and Zen. So somebody I think who is deeply centered in the void of meditation, and being able to take that consciousness into physical activity, into a place where this person is holding both concurrently. That to me is the essence of a Shaolin hero. And then personally, I think that's where the profundity, that's where the miracles, that's where the extraordinary happens. I'd like to open it up for our friends. Vincent, I see you shaking your head. We have some colleagues, we have people on our editorial staff, writing staff. We have a chance to interact with two extraordinary Shaolin disciples.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this. It's an amazing pledge. I mean, part of the pledge from your Kickstarter, which was such an amazing journey, both for you, obviously, as Immortal Studios, and for us, the fans. So just to give you a little bit of a background, so I'm French. I've been living in England for about 20 odd years. I've been doing karate for about 15 years or so. I still like to say that I am practicing martial arts, although I haven't really attended my dojo for years. Kids and life, hours of work really go in the way, unfortunately, of what I think us as a Western culture and Western people, Europeans and whatnot, can actually put aside as time we should be, focusing on martial arts studies. And as Yongto, I'm very sorry if I do butcher your name, they said before, it's a lifelong journey.
Keep going on your
total
training,
dedication
or your journey.
to
It's
achieving
martial arts. It's
a
just
mastery
it's a lifetime thing.
that
You don't think, oh,
evolves
when I'm gonna
with
retrieve
time.
a certain level. You just do it as just like as the life goes. As a part of your daily activity. You just already be one with your training. You don't think, okay, it's my training time. I go to the studio or judo to train, and 1 hour I come home, and you separate from your training. Try to become one with your training. When you think about throughout the day, just think about your movement, your practice. That's how the Shaolin, the old days training, was like. It's not really like specific time. They training all the time. Cleaning, eating the food, or and at the same time, how they can find the peace from the movement. Mm-hmm. And because your mind is the really powerful weapon. Actually, the old days people training kung fu for what? It's different from nowadays. It's people train the monk training kung fu, or the regular people train kung fu. In the old days, for survive, because you do need your kung fu skill to protect you when you travel. You may meet some people that want to, fight with you. If you're not good enough, you may die. That's how, old people training kung fu like this. Survive. You really like survive. There's not a choice. The real weapon is still your real skill. That's the big difference with nowadays training. People right now, they need a lot of motivation to, there's something to motivate me to practice something else. So they always find something to, push them forward. But old days people, they have a lot the appreciation. They will find a master to follow the master for years to learn something and never leave the master. The first 2 years, 3 years, you just stay around the master, serve the tea and cleaning the place, and then doing the hard work. That's all you do the first 2 or 3 years. And then later the master will accept you as the real disciple and start teaching you. That's really, really big difference with nowadays. But right now we don't have to be that way, because we don't need to survive with our martial arts skills. We don't have to fight with people when we go outside. We need more peace. We need more peace. There's too much going on in the world right now. We need more peace and the compassion. We need more respect, you know. So if we can change ourselves as an example, automatically we can influence our family, close friends, you know, and then to the community, to the world, you know, so everybody can spread out the love and the peace and the compassion from ourselves, you know. So very good, good. Good luck to you. Continue your training, no matter what style you are. You know, always take your effort and time. You know, and just be one with your life.
Thank you very much, Marcion, too.
Yeah, no, don't put it too many goals for you. You know, you just do as long as you can. You know, every day is a brand new, it's a fresh, it's a brand new day. Every training is a new training. And finish, and you know, you just go move on and finish for the next. So every day is a new training. It's the beginning. You know, there's no real ending. So always go circle. It's just like the Zen. So you will come back where you start.
Sure.
Eventually, yeah.
But again, I think one lovely little thing that Yancho just said just now reminded me of what my sensei, Vince Morris, always said, is that the happy martial artist is the one who never has to use any of his techniques in all his life. You train to achieve proficiency in fighting technique, in defending yourself, defending others, not attacking, defending. That's the way I look at martial arts, is defending yourself and protecting the people that matter to you, or a stranger down the street. But if you go all your life without having to actually use those fighting skills, what's wrong with that? It's still.
There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I would say people who are around the real masters, you know, they're the most peaceful, unassuming people around. You wouldn't think that they're not like bulging with muscles. And, you know,
no, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
they're totally unassuming. You would thought that this is somebody you can overlook. Hearing you say it, there's a Chinese saying in this kind of in this wuxia world, 侠以武为敬. So those who practice the way of the hero, the martial hero, is forbidden to use their martial skills. So the one who possesses it and has the ability, it's actually a no-no. It's a no-no to use it very frivolously. In fact, there has to be an extraordinary reason to do it. And I think even in talking about the other archetype of the Shaolin hero, somebody hidden, somebody who's doing it privately, not for the TV cameras. You know, you're trying to do something very, very discreetly.
We all have anniversaries. None of us have our 1500-year anniversary, which is just an amazing line in of itself. But I'm wondering if maybe, you know, it's been 1500 years. Shaolin has faced many kind of modern moments, and obviously we think our moment is the most modern, but maybe you can just speak about how Shaolin has either adapted or how they've you know, how they've continued the legacy through such a long history.
Well, lately it's been a lot about movies in the last couple decades. In fact, there's a new Shaolin movie coming out for Chinese New Year with yeah, and that's exciting because
directed by Stanley Tong, Jackie Chan's director.
Yeah, Wang Baoqian actually trained at Shaolin as a kid. So even though he's more known for his comedy, and I hope there's some lightheartedness about this film, I'm hoping that he shows some real authentic Shaolin Kung Fu. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, I love Shaolin Temple and Jet Li's film. That's one of the most pivotal films, martial arts films in history. But what they do there is primarily modern wushu. They don't really show authentic Shaolin. The more recent movie with Jackie Chan, the Shaolin movie, which Peter was involved with, they actually show some. It's based around Qixing Chuan, which is a very standard Shaolin form. So I'm hoping this new one kind of brings that authenticity back. I think one of the problems with media all those Shaw Brothers movies and Golden Harvest movies, those classic Shaolin films, is they don't really show the real Shaolin Kung Fu. They do show real Kung Fu, but it's not Shaolin Kung Fu. And that's one of the things we're really trying to bring back with Immortal, is to keep the styles authentic. I mean, the same thing kind of happens with the Ip Man series, is that, Donnie Yen's a wushu guy. And while he does really a great imitation of Wing Chun, it's still got this whole other, and they got to do that because it's got to be over dramatized for movies,
Yeah. Let me ask Master Yentuo to Robert's question, in addition to Jing's, like, how does an institution continue? How does this legacy continue?
I think in nowadays Shaolin, in the past, I heard a lot of people talk about the Shaolin Temple as being too much commercial way. And nowadays, and people say so like Shaolin Temple as like a Buddha's temple, the monks supposed like more close in, more focusing on your practice and your monks. You're supposed to just stay in the temple, not really too much on the social media, too much promotion stuff. I think right now, nowadays, 21st century, we have to combine with the new society. We have to go with the flow, go with the whole society change. So if we don't promote ourselves, which I very agree with Ching's point, we really need to show more Shaolin tradition, the real Shaolin traditional authentic Kung Fu. The details, what means a lot of details. So nowadays a lot of people know Shaolin Temple, Shaolin Kung Fu, but that's really, very few people understand it, Shaolin Kung Fu. Do you understand? So I know you, but I don't understand you. That's a lot, maybe like 100 people know Peter, but not only few people understand you, really understand you're a person. This is what we needed to do. How we can let people understand the Shaolin Kung Fu, Shaolin history, the Shaolin philosophy, the Shaolin tradition. We go in the new society, new days life, follow the world, but we have to bring our tradition back from old days.
I'd like to jump in. Thank you, Master Yentuo, for that question too. And I think it's that Shaolin persisted all these years because it's very competitive in the marketplace of ideas, that things that don't offer relevance eventually die off. I would argue that because of the complexities of modern life, the challenges, both physically, health-wise, and spiritually, that here's a well-honed technology, if you will. If you think about Shaolin as a lifestyle, as a technology, as a body of understanding that was designed to solve the problems of being a human being. Health, in terms of your mind, your lifestyle. So I think in modern complexities, this is a perfect opportunity for Shaolin to step up, because it's incredibly relevant for improving how you feel, how you behave, how you act, being on target and purposeful. So I think it is being very, very relevant. I'm going to close with one question. We've had a really, a great probe in questions. And in fact, I think this has been a very fun conversation to be part of. We should do more of these. But as a final question, I want to go to something a little bit present day, a little bit fun, a little bit controversial, which is asked our two panelists. Like, talk about this kind of conversation out in the marketplace today about Shaolin versus mixed martial arts, or traditional Kung Fu versus mixed martial arts. There's a lot of people saying that that Shaolin Kung Fu or traditional Kung Fu can't really fight. And that mixed martial arts, going toe to toe, a Shaolin monk and a mixed martial artist would, the traditional warrior would be decimated. What do you guys think about that?
Who go first? Ching go first.
Careful, you go.
You spoke already, so take it away.
Me? Okay. So I think right now the between the mixed martial arts with traditional kung fu, it's on a different level, and then it's not about. I know I heard a lot of people question about it's if the Shaolin kung fu still work in combat, in fighting, or other traditional kung fu still work in fighting or in combat. Of course, still works. Always works. It really depends on who's the one practicing it. The skills there never disappear. As actually it's us. We don't really to carry on the real kung fu skill to the next generation, or the next generation they don't want to carry on the training, the effort, the fighting, the knowledge. It doesn't mean that Shaolin kung fu doesn't work. Always works. I training for like the nowadays, I'll come outside right now standing here, I can fight people. Okay, if I never train as hard as like all this the monks train that same way, I can't even fight with one person.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the kung fu, the traditional kung fu, the problem, or it's me? It is me. So we really think about how can we carry on the tradition, not only for Shaolin's traditional kung fu, it's all other steps too. I think that's the one of the big challenge that fits in China for the all type of traditional kung fu, the masters. There's not that many young people willing to take the hard way, training like the hard way in like the old days. That's very fortunate. And then eventually some of the real treasure of kung fu, the knowledge will disappear, maybe.
It disappeared. It's already happening, actually.
It is happening right now. That's why it's a big challenge right now. And young people, they don't want it. They don't want to, train. They can't do it anymore.
It takes too long. And there's a real tradition to it. The real ways aren't being taught as much anymore.
That's true. We don't need to use kung fu to survive, to find a good life or good position of job. Right now you all about school study, do business. So nobody care about your kung fu anymore, like traditional kung fu. They need to make money.
18 years just to have basic mastery, right?
Yeah. So that's a big challenge right now. And so as myself, I really feel like I have very strong responsibility. Even though just use my own power, I can do as much I can to share the tradition, the Shaolin, the practice, and what's the real kung fu and authentic kung fu movement. At least I'm doing it. I feel this is the Shaolin Temple should do more to share the Shaolin traditional authentic kung fu movement to Western people. Not too many wushu or performers. I totally agree with Ching. The wushu, can't really to represent under our the lineage or the tradition. It's a new martial arts.
It's been stripped. A lot of it's been stripped.
Yeah.
So we have a note from Vincent. Modern life encroaching too much on the possibilities for more people to dedicate themselves to Shaolin Kung Fu. Is readily access to entertainment preventing the life? I would say it's really all of the above. All of the above. It's absolutely true. Gene, did you want to answer that question? And
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that people mistake about MMA and wushu is that they're both sports first and foremost. So they're bound by a set of rules, and you play to those rules. So in that way, they're kind of limited. Now, I don't want to detract from wushu athletes or MMA athletes because they're phenomenal athletes, but it's a very small window for you to be competitive. You basically, when you're at your height of physicality, you don't see 50-year-old wushu people or MMA people still in the game, whereas Shaolin Kung Fu, it's a lifetime. You see 80-year-old masters who still are relevant. And beyond that, there's this whole other range of things. I mean, the weapons, like Guandao, right? I mean, all these great traditional weapons. Shaolin has so many different weapons, and each one has its story, has its culture, and it kind of embedded in learning that form and learning that weapon. And people could say, well, what good is a Guandao on the street? It's not. I'm not going to have one when that mugger comes. But that's losing the art of it. That's losing the sense of the tradition and of the culture of it. Because I mean, when you learn these ancient weapons, there are so many lessons within that beyond just being able to wield it. Look, Guandao has this great mythology of Lord Guan and the Guan Gong, the whole Romance of Three Kingdoms. It opens up this huge door, and that I think is very critical in terms of learning a tradition, of understanding something, a traditional discipline. In that way, Shaolin is super deep. I mean, you never get to the bottom. There's so much material.
And, I think German Garcia wrote, just invite everybody in the chat, knowing this is the reality of Kung Fu and almost all martial arts, what can we do to change this? How can we reinvent ourselves and in turn, Shaolin Kung Fu to gain popularity and in turn, appreciation and respect for tradition? I would say, believe it or not, that was the intention behind creating the Adept. If you could put it all back, other than offering something fun and entertaining, we wanted to bring this message, this authenticity in a very pop cultural kind of way to start the conversation. The reason why we want to partner with Master Yen Tuo and support his mission and working with Ching and working with all of you who are aficionados, who are committed to kind of bring it out to the public sphere and have a larger conversation around it. That's probably initially not so scholarly. And by the way, my view is that Shaolin has never gone away. There are a lot of people with a lot of knowledge. And the reason we wanted to host some of this is just to highlight some of the tradition keepers and bring visibility, bring awareness to their work, because they truly need to be embraced and supported, and all of you for continuing that spirit in your own life. So let's partner together for the next chapters ahead. And talking to Master Yen Tuo, I was really heartened to hear that he was planning something called the Shaolin Retreat Center, I think up in Washington. I think there's immense need for a deepened understanding to experience it at a lifestyle level and to make it available. So I think initiatives such as that is enormously important. It's important to back the things that Gene does when he brings a scholarly knowingness and approach to it, and he talks about the tradition. And of course, we operate at the level of storytelling and pop culture. We want to permeate these ideas, these archetypes, this kind of transformative way of life, and make it popular, make it relevant. We can champion different archetypes, and I'm sure, German, you have your version of that, and Vincent, and so we're coming up to the bottom of our hour. I just want to say, I want to thank all of you for being part of this conversation. I want to thank Master Yen Tuo for bringing your extraordinary chi. I want to thank you, Master Jing Ching, Brother Jing Ching, for always representing our Immortal team. And last but not least, all of you, those of you who are part of this live experience, and those of you who are coming in and watching it, who've supported the Adept, who supported Immortal Studios. I think you got an inside look at what it's really all about for us, what really belies all the storytelling. So we want to thank you for your support. If you like what we're doing, we want to ask you to be engaged with us. We have other properties coming up. So our journey continues. I want to thank you again for being part of this extraordinary experience.